Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our digital devotion. It is the last Wednesday of October, which normally I'd cut some joke about how, if you've been waiting to get started on your New Year's resolution, you've run out of time. That is true, but a lot of things drawing near, and I'm both encouraged and still trepidatious about it, but glad to be here with you right now, and here we are. It is the 29th of October for you. As I sit here in front of this camera, it's not, but that is the miracle of technology and the internet. I'm pretty sure I need a new what you call it, I don't know, for this chair that I sit in. I did invest as much as I could years ago in a used, decent office chair. I can't remember, Leap or something it's called. I don't remember, but I've had get the hydraulic so that I go up and down. I've had that changed once, and you might see me readjusting a lot, and that's because I'm trying to get I pick myself up so that it will come up, but then it starts to slowly, so I'm guessing I need to replace it. It's kind of slowly sinks down. I may get shorter in the screen. You may notice, I don't know, but anyway, I am glad to be here with you, and by the time this goes on the internet, it is the last Wednesday, the 29th of October, and that is amazing to me. That it's odd. The front half of the year seems to drag a little, if we're honest, and for whatever reason, the second half of the year begins to rapidly pick up speed. But already thoughts of and talks of Thanksgiving holidays and Christmas decorations, and it is indeed rightly called the most wonderful time of the year. I hope that it is that for you as well. And I did want to spend one last time. If you were here with me last week, I mentioned that this would be the last time. I didn't pay attention enough, I guess you would say, that I had been with St. Augustine since August, which, haha, unintended, funny, but since August, September, October, 3 months of Augustine quotes. I guess that's how, according to what I see on my computer, that's how long it's been, and that is crazy. So one more before we end out our time together this year with something else. But one more quote from Augustine, but this one not from the Confessions, not from any random thing, but one of the the Confessions is probably the thing he's most well known for. But another thing that he is extremely well known for is a text called The City of God, a focus on heaven, on death, on what that means, on what it looks like. And so something that he says there that I think is of great importance as we think about death, and considering what my family, my wife's family has gone through recently with the death of a very close friend, basically family member. I don't think that's wrong to say. Many of you would not be aware of how tight-knit a group of people my in-law family is. My wife and her family, the Lucketts. It was a big deal, and still is, to be befriended by the Lucketts and to be considered a part of their clan. A very good friend of theirs, Miss Kathy Spindler, such a sweet woman. In fact, one of my favorite things about Miss Kathy is that ever since I began dating Becky, she was not only always so kind and complimentary, but I just always appreciated the fact that she took the time to make sure that Becky was reminded of how lucky she was to have landed a guy like me. So Miss Kathy was a special woman, and Miss Kathy passed from this life to the next just a few days ago. And so, as you remember them all in your prayers, it is a right time to reflect a little bit on death, but specifically the part that matters. And I'll get to that in a moment. First, can I remind you, this coming Sunday, we have the privilege and the honor of ordaining and set apart our very own John White for the service as of a deacon. Sorry, now I have a stutter. But we're going to have John ordained and set apart as a deacon to serve this congregation as he is rightly deserving to be set apart as a deacon. And so we're going to celebrate that by ordaining him publicly in the worship service on the 2nd of November, and then with a reception to follow afterwards, just to give everyone a chance to speak words of kindness and appreciation over him face to face after his ordination. That's all November 2nd. It starts at 10 a.m. It is the focus of our worship service that Sunday next week. So I encourage you to be there. I encourage you to invite somebody to be here as well. This is not something we do all the time, and so I'm very excited, and I hope that John feels the honor that we intend to express, because he has very openly and very clearly responded to the call that God has placed on him as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a person of faith. And so I'm proud to be able to recognize that further calling on him as a deacon. So I hope you'll join us in all of that. But don't forget that. And now let me bring up a quote. Here it is. I'm pretty sure City of God follows that same book and chapter citation difficulty. So if you don't care, I don't care. Here is the quote, though. They then, this is everyone, everyone. They then who are destined to die need not be careful to inquire what death they are to die, but into what place death will usher them. I love this quote. I won't say that I saved my favorite for last by any means, but I love this sort of a reminder. It doesn't need to be changed. I know that you understand what he's saying, but if we were to make it a modern English, all he's really saying is folks who are destined to die shouldn't care how they'll die. They should only care where they will be ushered by that death. In other words, it's the age-old question of where will you go when you die? And regardless of the discussion, regardless of the debate, regardless of how I would confess to you, even I sometimes wish it were not so, this collection of books is very clear. There are two destinations. One of them we would call paradise. We would call, when you hear somebody talk about eternity, it's probably what they're referring to. It goes by the name heaven, city of God, as Augustine titled that book. The kingdom of God, forever reigning, eternal, this Zion, great Jerusalem, the new heaven and new earth, all these titles that people reference to the eternity which we hope and desire to be headed toward. And then there is a second destination, and that is, as so many are familiar with, it's the one we not only like to avoid as our permanent address for all of time, but we all have probably at least at some point struggled with even comprehending its existence. Is there really a place called hell? Jesus talked about hell a great deal. God makes reference to hell a great deal. It is not to scare you. It is not to drive fear into the basement of your heart. It's to make sure you are aware there is a choice to make, and you are the one choosing. I know there's a great debate and a lot of discussion to be had about that one statement. But I believe at the end of all things, all those arguments being equal, we cannot escape the fact that we make a choice. And that choice ultimately defines where death will usher us, as Augustine said. Biblically, what we can hear are phrases like Matthew 10:28, where Jesus says, your job isn't to fear the one who can kill your body. You see, he's saying then what Augustine is drawing from. Let's give the hydraulic a rest. What Augustine is drawing from is this idea. You don't have to be afraid of death, the method that it comes to you. You don't fear the one who can harm your body. That's just bringing death. I don't want to be murdered. I don't want to be harmed. I don't want to burn alive. I don't want to drown. I've seen this mentioned on the internet a few times as well, but I had a far deeper concern with quicksand than I now know was reasonable. As a child, I thought, man, you got to know how to escape that stuff. It's just going to randomly be walking around one day and poof, it's the ground starts to swallow you. You know, I'm not as big of a problem as my younger self thought it was going to be. But there are other ways when we talk about death. I hope I don't die like this, like that, like the other. We have a list of things. In fact, it's interesting to me today, most people when asked would say, I hope I go peacefully in my sleep, to just kind of fade. And that's an interesting juxtaposition to many, many, many years ago with what research we do have access to and references. Most people wanted to have warning. They wanted to know it was coming so that they would have time to make amends. They would have time to say goodbyes. On the other hand, today, there seems to be such a commitment to avoiding any discomfort, which is, I understand. I have said the same thing. I would like to, again, I've told you, I don't know when, if you've heard me say it here, but my wife says we're living to 80 and then we're going to die together. And I tease her. That comes straight out of the book and the movie, The Notebook. She loves that movie. And so I tell her, so at 80 years old, we're going to go to bed one night and turn into swans. Doesn't matter. But we want to go peacefully and gently, and normally we don't want to know it's coming, and just fall asleep and die. But years before, people wanted to know it was coming so they could make peace, because there is an end where you can't say sorry, you can't say I love you, you can't do that anymore, not on this side of reality anyway. And so Jesus says, don't worry about the one who can do that. Don't fear that alone. But notice, that person, that one, the one who can only bring you death, they can't touch your soul. There is one, though, that you should fear, and that's the one who can destroy both your soul and your body. And where does it get destroyed? It gets destroyed in one of the two places that you will be ushered. It gets destroyed in hell. Now, this idea of destroy doesn't mean annihilation. It means it's suffering. I don't want this for anybody, and I would like that it wasn't so, but it is. And Augustine's quote, in fact, that entire area of that book is the idea of you are far too concerned with how you're going to die and too little concerned with where you go once you die. There's another verse that I sometimes think of about this. Now, this is a King James translation. It isn't far off at all. It's accurate. But just in case you see that KJV and wonder, it's not normally say that. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. This is talking about judgment. This is talking about where I am ushered when I die. In New American Standard words, basically identically, it is a terrifying thing. Fearful thing, same thing. A terrifying thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Where I go when I die is judgment. The Bible says in that same book of Hebrews, it is appointed once for all men to die, and then comes judgment. And that judgment is not a judgment of where I will end up. It is a judgment of what I have chosen that is the choice of where I end up. And we need to be mindful of the choice we're making. We need to care far more about where we will be ushered at death, less about how we will die. I don't mean to suggest that a host of you out there are overcome with wondering, how will I die? How will I die? Death is on my mind because of what my wife's family is experiencing right now. But certainly no one woke up the other day thinking that Miss Kathy would no longer be with us in just a handful of days. Certainly no one woke up and thought any of what has come. We wake up with expectations, but sometimes, my oh my, do things happen that far go beyond what we expected. And it doesn't matter that we're taken aback by those things. That's fine. We don't know everything. It does matter, though, that we pay attention to what it is we ought to be concerned with. And so I wonder, are we concerned enough with where we're headed? Not exactly how we'll ultimately get there through death, but where am I headed? We need to be concerned with that. And so Augustine said, I'll put it up one more time. They then who are destined to die need not be careful to inquire what death they are to die, but to what place death will usher them. Do not fear the one who can harm your body, kill your body, but can't touch your soul. Don't worry about that. Fear the one who can destroy your body and your soul in hell. Fear, respect, trust, honor, obey. Pay attention to where you're headed. I hope that gives you something to chew on and think about here at the end of October. I'm just going to ask God to bless, and then I'll leave you alone. Would you pray with me? Father Almighty, thank you so much for this time you give us. Thank you that all this stuff works. Even a worn out hydraulic or whatever it's called, God. Thank you that it works well enough that this chair just keeps me sat here every time I sit down. I praise you. These are little things that I take too far for granted, and so I am grateful. Thank you for this technology working, and for my friends who spend these minutes with me, that you might speak into us and encourage us on things like being mindful of where we're all headed. I pray that you would keep us mindful, that we would live every day with that on our mind, not in a fearful sense, but in a commitment sense. I am passing from this life to the next. I am headed home, but I have been appointed a job to do, a mission to share love and the gospel. I just pray you would make us passionate about doing that job until it is not our job to do any longer. One day you will call us home. Help us be busy until that day comes. And I pray and ask that in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen. Thank y'all for being here as we say goodbye to October and hello to November. We say hello to, I can almost smell it, the Thanksgiving lunch. And so I look forward to that, just a few weeks away. Until then and now and every Wednesday in between, I hope that God blesses you and guides you in all things. I hope you taste joy every day in a new and fantastic way. And I appreciate you being here with me. Wherever you go now that this time has come to a close, I pray that you remember to go into the world around you and to all those people that you get to come in contact with. And I pray you pour kindness out on them. But that you do that knowing that the only way you can make it possible is because you have first tasted the kindness that Jesus poured out on you. I love you so much. Thank you for being with me. I will see you the next time that we're together, okay? Good night. Goodbye.